Your eyes are drawn to the girl's piercing gaze. But who is she? Why is she sitting naked on the bed? What story hides behind that haunted look? Is this just a simple room, or a prison silently holding her in place? At the very end of the 19th century, Edvard Munch painted a work that for over 100 years has left viewers and art historians with more questions than answers. Some see it as a nude model posed for the painter. Others see a girl imprisoned, a victim of violation. Some interpret it as a girl experiencing her first menstruation, and still others dismiss it as nothing more than a copy. This is the story of Puberty, one of Edvard Munch's most enigmatic and misunderstood masterpieces. Edvard Munch was born in Løten, Norway, the second of 5 children. From the very beginning, his childhood was overshadowed by illness, death, and a deep fear of inheriting his family's psychological troubles. His mother died of tuberculosis when he was just 5 years old, and his sister followed at 13. Another sister later suffered from severe mental illness and was institutionalized. To entertain his sickly young son, and perhaps to prepare him for the darker sides of life, Munch's father introduced him to the works of Edgar Allan Poe, exposing him early on to horror, fear, and the depths of the human psyche. These early tragedies carved deep grooves into Munch's psyche. Even as fame and fortune came to him later in life, they could not mend his emotional fragility. Yet Munch's introspection soon transformed those wounds into the foundation of his art. Through what he called his soul's diary, a notebook where he recorded his thoughts, dreams and fears, Munch found a new creative turning point. This practice became central to his art. Out of this introspection emerged works like The Sick Child, where the haunting memory of his sister Sophie's illness came to life on the canvas, marking the birth of Munch's so-called soul paintings. Even the iconic The Scream can be traced back to these formative years, a visual echo of a life spent confronting death, illness, and the fragility of the human soul. But the road to success was anything but smooth. Before Munch became a world-renowned painter, he was mocked and dismissed by bourgeois critics who derided his works as stains, codfish porridge in lobster sauce, repulsive, hideously ugly, and dozens of other colourful insults. At his 1892 Berlin exhibition, the public outrage was so intense that the show was shut down just 1 week after opening. And even when Puberty was first exhibited in Berlin, it sparked controversy and divided opinion. Now take a closer look at the painting. The girl sits at the edge of her bed, alone, naked, vulnerable, in an empty room that feels almost like a prison cell. Her legs are pressed tightly together. Her arms cross her body in a gesture of modesty and fear. One hand rests on her knee, the other on her thigh. Her gaze is fixed and wide-eyed. Her lips are tense. Long hair falls loosely over her shoulders. Her chest is flat. She's unmistakably prepubescent, caught between childhood and adolescence. Behind her, a dark looming shape stretches across the wall. Is it a spirit, a demon, or just a shadow? Decades later, Carl Jung would call shadows like this archetypes of the unconscious, parts of ourselves we suppress, deny, or fear. He even called it a double, the hidden self revealing our inner truths, threat or destiny, the anxiety and pain of puberty, the imminent awakening of desire, the connection between sexuality and death. Notice the light. It comes from the left. It illuminates the girl. Her shadow stretches behind her. A subtle metaphor emerges. Awareness brings the shadow with it, exposing her fears and insecurities. These monumental recurring shadows became Munch's signature. They appear in his self-portraits, in works like Olga Bure, and especially in Moonlight. There, the figure nearly dissolves into darkness, merging with the night. The scene feels suspended in a nightmare. Only the white fence and house wall hint at a physical space. The dense shadow almost becomes a second character. Her hollow, ghostly eyes evoke horror, The painting could serve as a poster for a psychological horror film. Munch revisited this theme multiple times. The young model, Puberty, At Night, and the two later versions of Puberty between 1914 and 1916. He also returned to the image of a naked woman on a bed in morning yawn and weeping nude. Both echo the same haunting vulnerability. It's as if the girl has grown into a woman, but remains trapped in the same oppressive room. Puberty continues to provoke questions. Is this merely a model posing? A girl imprisoned and violated? Or a visual exploration of nocturnal, erotic fears and desires? Essential contrasts of light and dark. Dark tones with faint traces of red, evoking both menstrual blood and tuberculosis, the disease that took his mother and sister. Every line, every brushstroke, every shadow carries fragments of Munch's personal experience. But the question remains, should we look for the source of puberty solely in Munch's personal life? Or was he perhaps a keen observer of shadows cast by other artists before him? The Greatest Love of Don Juan by Belgian artist Félicien Rops. Before Puberty, there was another haunting image of fear and desire. Munch himself claimed that Puberty was a reconstruction of an earlier work, created around 1885 to 1886, which was tragically lost in a studio fire. He insisted he wasn't influenced by Rops, yet critics and art historians have long noticed the similarities. So here's the question. Did Munch truly invent this image of adolescent fear and awakening desire? Or was he perhaps unconsciously following in someone else's footsteps? I'll leave that for you to decide in the comments. Whatever the answer, Munch's vision remains unmistakably his own, filled with the anxiety, desire, and existential dread that define the frieze of life. But what if someone else took that same vision and pushed it even further? Would we still call it imitation or evolution? Take Marzella by Ernst Ludwig Kirchner. At first glance, it immediately brings to mind the symbolic figure in Munch's Puberty, a young, vulnerable girl, seated naked before us. But Kirchner goes further. Whatever her identity, Marzella becomes a melancholic portrait of restless adolescence. Her gaze is bold, defiant, sexual, yet hollow, brimming with anxiety. With just a few daring brushstrokes, Kirchner channels Munch's psychological intensity, but amplifies it, making it darker, more fevered, more haunting. And this is the legacy of Munch. His masterpiece, like so much of his work, became a blueprint for the German expressionists. Munch planted the seed. Expressionism screamed it,